Morning decisions. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
Did you know if your windows are bare, indoor temperatures can go up 20 degrees? Turn the temperature down with Blinds.com and get up to 50% off custom window treatments like solar roller shades and more during the Memorial Day mega sale. Whether you want to DIY it or have a pro handle everything, we've got you. Free samples, real design experts, and zero pressure. Just help when you need it. This is your last chance to shop up to 50% off site-wide during the Memorial Day mega sale at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions apply.
This is ParaReality Radio. It's Friday, March 19th, 2004, and the time is 10 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. I'm Sandman, and I'll be your host for the next hour and a half or so. Got a very interesting show lined up for you tonight, and I've got to say that I'm really excited about it. I'm going to be exploring the connections between the Lumbee Indians and the Lost Colony of Roanoke. I don't think that there are many people out there who have heard of the Lumbees, and as far as I know, there's never been a radio show done on tonight's topic. So as far as I'm concerned, this, ladies and gentlemen, is an exclusive that you're only going to hear right here live on ParaReality Radio. And, of course, as always, I'll be closing the show with the ever-popular News of the Strange this evening. Now, if you'd like to get in touch with me during the show, you can reach me a few different ways. I do have Yahoo Messenger. It is up and running. My Yahoo Messenger nickname is GreyDragon98. That's Grey Dragon 98. I also have MSN Chat, or MSN Messenger, up and running. You can find me by typing in Skywalker89 at hotmail.com, and you should be able to find me that way on the MSN Messenger. And as always, I have my Microsoft Net Meeting up and running. Have yet to have anyone call me on Net Meeting, so I don't really know if that would even work, if the listeners could hear me have a conversation live on the air with someone who calls in on Net Meeting. I have no idea, but if you're out there listening and you want to be the first to give it the old college try, you can ping my IP address, and it is 192.168.0.2. Once again, that's 192.168.0.2 on my Microsoft Net Meeting. Or, if you don't want to do either one of those three, you can always drop me an email at prradio@50g.com. That's the number 50, the letter G, prradio@50g.com.
Do you hear that? Sounds like breakfast is ready. Because Quaker's coming in hot with morning nutrition. 100% whole grain oats and a good source of fiber to fuel the rhythm of your morning and kickstart your day. And that sounds absolutely delicious. Fuel to start whatever's next. Quaker, official sponsor of FIFA World Cup 26.
Chronic migraine, 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more, can make me feel like a spectator in my own life.
Botox, onabotulinum toxin A, prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine. It's not for those with 14 or fewer headache days a month. It's the #1 prescribed branded chronic migraine preventive treatment.
Prescription Botox is injected by your doctor. Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, including ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Why wait? Ask your doctor, visit BotoxChronicMigraine.com, or call 1-800-44-BOTOX to learn more.
All right, now I got all that crap, that BS commercializing stuff out of the way. Wasted the first 10 minutes of the show. Let's get on with tonight's show. Man, like I said, I'm really excited about this because I don't think that there's ever been anyone that's ever done a show exactly like this or on this particular topic that I'm doing it on. It's on the Lumbee Indians and their connection to the Lost Colony of Roanoke. When Sir Walter Raleigh made his first attempt at establishing a colony in the New World, as it was called back then, it was in 1584, and explorers were sent to investigate the nature of the lands that had been granted to Raleigh by Queen Elizabeth I. So the first area that was explored was a parcel of land known as Roanoke Island. It was in the Tidewater coastal area of North Carolina. This area was promptly named Virginia in honor of Queen Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen of England. Some of the natives of the area were pretty hostile, and this combined with a lot of bickering among the English and a shortage of supplies just helped to drive pretty quickly these original settlers back to England. But Raleigh was really determined to establish some kind of a permanent English colony or an English presence in the New World. So he sent a second group of settlers back 1 year later. These settlers were under the guidance of Governor John White. There were 117 men, women, and children that set sail for the New World on this second adventure. And guess what they did? They stopped precisely where Raleigh had specifically instructed them not to stop. That place was Roanoke Island once again. So the second colonists landed in the middle of the summer. It was too late in the season to plant crops to see them through the winter, and there wasn't enough food left in the supplies brought over from England to feed the group until a spring crop could be planted and harvested. So Governor White agreed to return to England for additional supplies. The settlers, the colonists, remained behind on Roanoke Island. Before he left, Governor White and his group got together, had a little discussion, and they agreed that if the group decided to move inland away from the open sea, that some sort of markings would be left behind indicating the direction that they traveled. If, for some reason, they fled hurriedly or if they were in danger, what they were supposed to do was they were supposed to carve a cross in some sort of prominent place that was going to be easily seen by Governor White whenever he returned. Now, unfortunately for everyone involved, when Governor White arrived back in England, he found that the country was at war with Spain, and the circumstances of that war would prevent him from returning to the New World, affectionately known as America. It would prevent him from returning there for 3 whole years. When he did finally arrive at Roanoke Island 3 years later, he found not one member of the group he had left behind. Nada. Zero. Nobody. This is the group that became known as the Lost Colony, and it remains known by that name today. Now, there was one North Carolina scholar by the name of Samuel Ash who wrote this quote, "When the colonists receded from White's view as he left the shores of Virginia, they passed from the domain of history, and all we know is that misfortune and distress overtook them, and that they miserably perished, their sad fate being one of the deplorable sacrifices that have always attended the accomplishment of great human purposes." End quote. How incredible that historians have always blindly accepted and continue to accept this naive assumption in spite of the weight of the evidence to the contrary. All of these years, centuries, we have accepted that something terrible happened to these people, but yet we have all of this evidence that points to something not terrible happening. It points to the contrary. It's just incredibly unbelievable that history refuses to look at the facts and say, hey, maybe something else happened to them, and maybe this wasn't something horrible. Governor John White, based on his own written accounts, wasn't concerned hardly in the least little bit over his failure to find these settlers. He noted that the possibility of the colony moving inland for 50 miles had been discussed prior to his departure for England. It had been agreed that if such a move were made, the settlers were going to indicate with that marking that I had told you about earlier. It was also agreed that if they were in danger, they would signify this with a cross. Once again, I just mentioned that. While he didn't find any inhabitants on the island, he did find, carved in a tree, the letters C-R-O. And elsewhere on a gatepost, he found the word Croatoan. Now, significantly, there was no cross indicating distress. This was the agreed upon signal for distress. On top of that, most of the goods left behind were the possessions of Governor John White. If they weren't his possessions, they were goods which would have been cumbersome and burdensome on a long journey. Most articles had been buried, almost as if the colonists hoped to return and recover these things at some kind of future date in time. So that right there is telling you that when these people left, they didn't do so in haste. They did so at a leisurely type pace. They had time enough to take their possessions. They had time enough to bury some stuff, like we're going to come back and get it later. So what's this? This is the first clue that, hey, maybe something, else happened. Maybe they didn't get attacked by Indians, Native Americans, whatever you want to call it. At the time of the first attempt at a settlement, there was a Native American leader named Manteo of the Hatteras Nation. He was friendly. He befriended the strangers to his shores. And in his records, in White's records, he also wrote, and this is a quote, "I greatly joyed that I had safely found a certain token of their being at Croatoan, which is the place where Manteo was born, and the savages of the island our friend." End quote. Governor White embarked on a search for Croatoan, but this search was cut short by a captain, a sailing captain, who insisted that he had to leave for the West Indies. So White had to cut his trip short, or had to cut his search short. And also, to add to the confusion, Governor White probably couldn't have known at all that the word Croatoan wasn't a village. What it referred to was a large hunting area used by the Hatteras, and not a specific location, not a specific village or town. It was a large hunting area. Now, as the stream of Europeans continued to flow into the New World, many of them took up the search for the lost colony. Amazingly enough, their reports and findings have been continually and consistently ignored by modern historians, historians back in their time, and any time in between. Following the founding of Jamestown, Captain John Smith wrote in 1608 that 2 explorers had been told by natives in the area of men who dressed like Englishmen. In 1613, an official of the Virginia colony wrote of native reports that Governor White's people had moved inland, built 2-story stone houses, and lived with the natives in that area for some 20 years. With the settling of Jamestown, they had moved with their native families further south into Lumbee territory. We're starting to get into the Lumbee Indians now. The reports became more detailed as explorers continued their journey southward, and in 1660 there was a minister who told of being overtaken by friendly natives who spoke English. All the accounts were very careful and very detailed, and there's also some accounts, more detailed accounts, of adventures of a German explorer who traveled from Virginia, and he tells of his meetings with a powerful nation of bearded men. Now, it's often noted that Native Americans, didn't have a lot of facial hair, so all of a sudden this guy comes with a powerful nation of bearded men. He meets up with these people. Well, that doesn't sound like Native Americans to me. Now, Native American men are capable of growing beards and mustaches, and they have body hair and stuff like that. The fact that they don't have any hair at all, except for on top of their head, is a big fat myth. I want to clear that up. But most of the time, you won't see a Native American with facial hair. Okay. John Lawson, often referred to as the first North Carolina historian, he wrote of a native guide he hired who knew about talking books and speaking paper. Sounds like a book to me. This guy asked to see a Bible that Lawson had with him. He also asked Lawson to take his son and educate him in the ways of the white man. This guy showed apparently a true affection for the English people. He also spoke of his ancestors, who were the Hatteras, and he said some of those were white people. And he also said that he had relatives with gray eyes. The Lumbees are known as the people with the gray eyes. How about that? Lawson also tells of being given chickens by some friendly natives. Now, what do you think is strange about that? Well, probably nothing, but get this. Chickens was a clear indication that at least some of the English colonists from Roanoke survived, because there were no domestic fowl on the continent of the United States, North America. There were no domestic fowl on this continent until they were introduced by the English. So, Governor White comes, he finds no cause for distress, no markings indicating that they were in danger. Everything looked like it had been packed up orderly and neatly. And people are seeing bearded men, a nation of bearded men. We have Indians who tell of their ancestors who were white and had gray eyes. And we have chickens, all indicating some form, shape, or fashion. At least a few of these colonists from the Roanoke settlement survived. Now, the natives of this swampy tidewater area that we're talking about in North Carolina have always referred to themselves as the Lumbees, and that's Lumbee, Lumbee. They've always referred to themselves as the Lumbees, the people of the Lumbee River. White governments, always confused by this group of what they term as talkative Indians, have called them just about everything else in the book, including the Croatan Indians and Tuscarora Indians, up until 1953, when they were finally and officially named the Lumbee. Now, in 1888, a guy by the name of Hamilton Macmillan, one of the best white friends of the Indians of North Carolina, and I'm talking about specifically Robeson County, which is where the Lumbee Indians make their home in North Carolina. He's one of the best white friends the Indians of Robeson County ever had. He was also a very able state legislator and local historian. He published a pamphlet with just this humongous title, a huge title for a pamphlet. Listen to this title: Sir Walter Raleigh's Lost Colony, a historical sketch of the attempts of Sir Walter Raleigh to establish a colony in Virginia with the traditions of an Indian tribe in North Carolina, indicating the fate of the colony of Englishmen left on Roanoke Island in 1587. Man, that's a long title for just a little pamphlet, isn't it? Now, in this pamphlet, Macmillan, he just strongly defended the tradition that at least some of these lost colonists survived and joined up with Manteo's tribe, migrating ultimately into what's called modern-day Robeson County. As a matter of fact, he so strongly believed this that the year prior to publishing his pamphlet, he succeeded in getting the North Carolina General Assembly to designate the Indians of Robeson County, as they were called at that time. He got the General Assembly to designate them as the Croatan Indians. This was because he mistakenly believed that this was the name of the tribe with which the colonists took refuge. Not the Hatteras, but he was thinking Croatan. Remember, Croatan was not a specific Indian village. It was not the name of the Indians. It was the name of the hunting ground where the Hatteras used to hunt. Now, Macmillan's position was supported by a prominent lawyer and a prominent businessman as well in Robeson County. His name was Angus Wilton McLean. Now, he later on became governor of North Carolina in the 1920s. Even though he strongly believed that there was Cherokee blood among the people in the area of Robeson County, he definitely accepted the Lumbee tradition of the Lost Colony descent. He wrote in a letter to the Commissioner of Indian Affairs in 1914 this, and it's quoted right here, quote, "My opinion is, from a very exhaustive examination, that these Indians are not only descendants of Sir Walter Raleigh's Lost Colony, but that they are also mixed with the Cherokee Indians," end quote. Now, this guy, remember, he went on to become a governor. This future governor went on to say that the Lumbees, from time immemorial, have contended that they were of Cherokee descent, and that they further have a tradition among them that their ancestors, or some of them at least, came from Roanoke and Virginia. Now, Roanoke and Virginia, of course, originally comprised all of eastern North Carolina, including Roanoke Island, the settlement of Sir Walter Raleigh's Lost Colony. The relationship of the Cherokee and the Lumbee people is not something that I'm going to get into at this point in time, but there is a small relationship between the Lumbee and the Cherokee. Now, there were small relationships between all, just about it, of the Indian tribes. You had some mixing of the blood, as you will, which is not that uncommon. So it's not something that we really need to get into when we're talking about the Lumbees and the Lost Colony here. Stuff like that happened all the time. Just like you have Americans and English people get together all the time, or you have a black guy dating a white woman. It happens all the time. It's not significant enough to place a lot of emphasis on. So that doesn't take any precedence here, because Indian tribes, different nations, had intermixing with other nations. Now, there's another professional historian, a nationally known historian by the name of Stephen B. Weeks, who was a strong proponent of the Lost Colony theory. And in 1891, he published in the Papers of American Historical Association an article called "The Lost Colony of Roanoke, Its Fate and Survival." After examining the evidence, both oral and written, Professor Weeks concluded that the Croatans, remember that's what they were called then, the Croatans of today claim descent from the Lost Colony. Their habits, disposition, and mental characteristics show traces of Indian and European ancestry. Their language is the English of 300 years ago, and their names are in many cases the same as those borne by the original colonists. No other theory of their origin has been advanced, and it is confidently believed that the one here proposed is logically and historically the best, supported as it is both by external and internal evidence. If this theory is rejected, then the critic must explain in some other way the origin of a people which, after the lapse of 300 years, show the characteristics, speak the language, and possess the family names of the second English colony planted in the Western world. End quote. So, we just have all kinds of evidence that's pointing to the survival of the lost colonists, that they found friendly Indians, most probably the Hatteras, and they intermingled with them. They mixed in, and they formed their own Indian nation by the mixing of the Indians and the whites. They made their own nation, their own tribe. Investigation is continued, but none disputed the earliest records of history. In 1914, the Secretary of the Interior was sent by the U.S. Senate to investigate the tribal rights of the Indians of Robeson County. The findings included statements like, there's a tradition among these people at the present time that their ancestors were the lost colony, amalgamated with some tribe of Indians. This tradition is supported by their looks, their complexion, color of skin, hair and eyes, by their manners, customs, and habits, and by the fact that while they are in part of undoubted Indian origin, they have no Indian names and no Indian language. His further research revealed that there were 95 different surnames which came from the original 117 settlers of the lost colony. He was able to account for 41 of those direct surnames among the Lumbee, and still more that had been altered in some shape, form, or fashion. The Secretary's investigation validated that the Lumbee were indeed descendants of the lost colony. There's no other explanation for it. So, were the Lumbee given tribal rights following this investigation? No. Without exception, every attempt to gain recognition for these Native American peoples has been rejected by the Congress of the United States. Why? Well, because they don't look Indian according to the standards for appearance that had been set. They don't act Indian, whatever that means. They don't talk Indian, meaning they have no native language of their own. And they don't have Indian names. So clearly, they are not Indian according to what the standards are that has been set by the white people. The people who govern this nation, The white people set the standards for the Native Americans. There's a freaking reason why they're called Native Americans, because they were freaking here first. So the white people, and I'm a white person, my white people, set the standards to govern the Native Americans who were here before us for millennia. And we're saying that these Native American peoples, the Lumbee Indians, they don't look Indian, they don't act Indian, they don't talk Indian, and they don't have Indian names, so they're not Indian. Well, they're a mixture of Indian and white. And if you've got a little bit of Indian in you, guess what, damn it? You're freaking Indian. You're Native American. If you've got some Native American blood in you, you're our Native American. It is generally accepted by acknowledged historians and scholars of past generations that the Lost Colony was taken in by a native tribe, probably the Hatteras. This tribe moved south along the Lumbee River in Robeson County, North Carolina. Yet our history books have never been corrected. I remember going over this when I was in school. Never did I ever hear anything about this stuff that I'm talking to you about tonight. Never heard of the Lumbee Indians. I never freaking heard the Lumbee Indians until about 4 years ago. It is the position of our elected officials that the Lumbee have been so acculturated, if you will, into English ways that nothing of their native traditions exist, and that their native blood has been so diluted by European blood that they are no longer quote-unquote red. In other words, they're not Indian, but damn it, they are. And they are a mixture of the Hatteras tribe and those 117 men, women, and children from Sir Walter Raleigh's second attempt to establish a colony at Roanoke. The evidence is overwhelming. It is completely overwhelming. But what is the specific evidence on what these prominent men and scholars rest their case? I've already stated a whole bunch of it. Generally, they were all convinced that the colonists weren't really lost, that they simply just moved to the mainland to live with these friendly Indians, thus tying their future to that of their native brothers. In other words, they accepted the testimony of Governor John White, John Smith, William Strachey, and others. The failure of early adventurers to make direct contact with the survivors did not distress them, because they realized that the word Croatan, to which the settlers indicated they had moved themselves to, was not a clearly defined location. Some accounts and some maps indicate that it was an island to the south of Roanoke, while other sources indicate that it was part of the mainland itself. In fact, no one knew exactly where the settlers went at all. It's quite possible that the word Croatan meant more than just one particular place. Croatan might have been the designation for the hunting area for the Hatteras, a designation the white settlers would not necessarily have known about, and would not necessarily have understood. Consequently, finding Croatan, the place, might not have been just as simple as even Governor John White had thought it might be. Now, remember, he was rushed to get the heck out of there, so would he have found his lost colony if he had been given time? Who knows? If he didn't know exactly where Croatan was, remember, he wasn't there for 3 years. It's a pretty good possibility that the people who wrote the word Croatan knew where it was and knew what they were talking about, because they were living freaking there. Now, all of these scholars were impressed by the names that were found among the Lumbees, which are clearly either similar to some of those listed on the John White log, or exactly the same. There were 117 settlers on Roanoke Island when Governor White sailed back to England for additional supplies in 1587. Among those settlers were 95 different surnames. Now, as counted by Hamilton Macmillan, 41 of those surnames I've already mentioned this, 41 of those surnames, which is more than 43%, including names like Dare, Cooper, Stevens, Sampson, Harvey, Howe, Cage, Shevin, Jones, Brooks, and lots of others. Lots of these names were found among who? The Lumbee Indians. These were people living more than 200 miles away from Roanoke Island. Even more remarkable than that, Macmillan found in the late 19th century, and this is occasionally found among some of the older residents today, was the fact that the traditions of every family bearing the name of one of the lost colonists point to Roanoke Island as the home of their ancestors. In other words, these people say, oh yeah, my family name can be traced all the way back to Roanoke Island and the lost colonists, because I've been told this for my whole life. My grandfather told it to my father. My grandfather's 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 grandfather told it to him. It just goes on and on and on. Now, while some of the family names that existed earlier have probably completely disappeared, the comparison of the names is really, really interesting. Admittedly, most of the names are fairly common English names, and the similarity of names would not, just in itself, prove a connection with the lost colony. But this development added to the fact that there's no other satisfactory explanation as to why the Indians in Robeson County, the Lumbees, have English names. This has got to be considered as additional evidence in explaining what happened to Raleigh's colonists and identifying the origin of the Lumbee Indians. Moreover, the Lumbees, prior to the breakdown of their geographical isolation in the mid-20th century with the advent of mass media, they spoke, up until then, a pure Old English dialect. Their language differed from that of the whites, they differed from that of the blacks among who they were living with. According to Dr. Stephen Weeks, they have preserved many forms in good use 300 years ago, but which are now obsolete in the written language and are found only in colloquial and dialectical English. Now this was, remember, back in the mid-20th century. That's where that quote was taken from. He went on to describe how the Lumbees drawled the final syllable in every sentence and how they began all their greetings with mon, which meant man. Dr. Weeks, as well as many other observers, also noted that they usually begin their phrases, their sentences, something like this. And I know this is going to sound strange, and I'm trying to make this sound as Old English as I possibly can, so please, bear with me here. This is something like they might have sounded. Mon, my father told me that his father told him, and so forth and so on. To further illustrate the Old English patterns and characteristics of the speech of the Lumbees at that time, Dr. Weeks wrote this following passage, and I'm going to quote this. Quote, "They retain the parasitic Y, which was an extremely common development in Anglo-Saxon in certain words through the palatial influence of the previous consonant, pronouncing cow as kyow, cart as kyart, card as kyard, girl as girl, kind as kind. The dialectical James is found in place of James. They regularly use mon for man, mention for measurement, ax for ask, hit for it, hosen for hose, hausen for houses, crone is to push down, and wit means knowledge." End quote. Now, one's reminded that these speech characteristics were present when the first whites came into contact with the Lumbees in the early 18th century, and that they persisted to a considerable extent up until as recently as the 1950s. More importantly, no one has yet offered an alternative explanation as to how these people learned to speak that type of English and made it their natural language. If they weren't influenced by settlers from Sir Walter Raleigh's missing colony, how in the hell did they learn to talk like that and make that their native language? But still, all the evidence offered to this point doesn't satisfy the skeptical people. Remember that dude, Samuel Ash, that I talked about earlier? He was determined to preserve, let's call it the romance of the Lost Colony, even in defiance of all of this logical evidence and all the evidence to the contrary. He wrote this, quote, "Because names borne by some of the colonists have been found among a mixed race in Robeson County, now called Croatons," remember that's what the Lumbees used to be called, "an inference has been drawn that there was some connection between them. It is highly improbable that English names would have been preserved among a tribe of savages beyond the second generation, there being no communication except with other savages." End quote. In other words, most of the scholars argued invariably that if Raleigh's colonists went to live with Manteo and his people, they would in due course have adopted the Indians' culture rather than vice versa. This is really interesting because virtually no one seems to have considered the demography of the situation. Many Indian villages consisted of as little as 10 to 15 families, and this was quite possibly the case with the village that Manteo was in. Now, this is not like what you see on the John Wayne Cowboys and Indians movie or in the westerns of the 50s and 60s, where you've got a nation that's all living together with, 500-600 people or 1,000 Indians. They had big nations, but they most oftentimes lived in settlements of 10 to 15 families scattered out here and there and here and there. They did keep in contact with each other, but it wasn't a big freaking tribe of 500 or 600 people. Now, if this is true with Manteo's Hatteras Indians, this is more logical than assuming that there were these hundreds or so people living at this Croatan place that I was talking about. Then it's indeed conceivable that the English culture predominated and the Indians were assimilated by the whites. Because if you had a small group of 10 to 15 families, let's say there were 15 families. Okay, well, there's at least 2 people per family, because we're all talking about a family. So you take 15 and multiply that times 2, so you got 30. And if they have 1 child apiece, you're going to add 15 more to that, so you could have 45 people. You might even have up to 60. But remember, there were 117 men, women, and children in the Lost Colony. So it's not inconceivable that the Indians were assimilated by the whites. Even the skeptics are totally unable to explain how the Lumbees came to have their distinctively English culture. Even this guy Ash that I was talking about, noted for his white supremacist attitudes back in the late 19th century, he admitted that many people believed them to be the descendants of the Lost Colony, and that the legislature officially designated them as the Croatan Indians, and have treated them as Indians. Now, it's also important to note that there are traditions among the Lumbees that their ancestors moved from their former coastal homes to the Black River area of North Carolina in the vicinity of what is present-day Sampson County in North Carolina. The time of their removal from the Black River region to the banks of the Lumbee River is not known, at least not that I can find out, but all the traditions of the people point to a time prior to the Tuscarora War, and it seems likely that they were settled in Robeson County as early as 1650. So the Lumbee Indians have been there for quite a long while. Now, all of this is only based on oral history, but once again, it seems logical because Indians were a mobile people, and certainly if there were white people who had joined up with them, they would have wanted to avoid any conflict with hostile people. The fact that there were whites mixed in with the Reds, mixed in with Indians, and probably had families and everything, would have made them different from the other nations, and this difference would have made this mixed group naturally wary of other people, particularly if the white culture prevailed as seems to be the most likely thing. Understandably, they would have wanted to have moved into a largely unsettled area, and they probably continued to seek out a location which would guarantee them the most isolation. Now, Robeson County would have been viewed as the promised land for people seeking to escape people seeking to escape contact, because this county, this place, was virtually surrounded by swamps for centuries, with only just a few trails that were cut through it. It was one of the last areas settled by the white man, and one of the least desirable locations from the standpoint of most Indians. So a people who sought isolation would really find it there in Robeson County. And you know what? They did. So in short, geography seems to be the real explanation as to why the Lumbees retained the English language and mode of living, which is their legacy from the Lost Colony. While proof of the Lumbee descent from the Lost Colony in the form of things like birth records and other documents is really probably not going to be found, all of this circumstantial evidence that I've been talking about, when joined up with just the logic of the whole thing, unquestionably supports the Lumbee tradition that there was a real and lasting connection with the Raleigh settlement, the Lost Colony. The survival of the colonists' names, the uniqueness of the Lumbee dialect in the past, the oral traditions that are passed down, the demography of the 16th century North Carolina area, the fact that Indians were a mobile people, and heck, just add into that human adaptability and the isolation of modern-day Robeson County, all that circumstantial evidence proves beyond a shadow of doubt that the Lost Colony theory is true. When you combine these factors with just the determination and the will of man to survive, regardless of what century they're in, regardless of where they live, and with the fact that no one can satisfactorily explain the English culture of the Lumbees, a culture obviously adopted over a long period of time, because all traces of Indian culture could not have been obliterated in one or even two generations, no other conclusion is reasonable. So, what are the Lumbee Indians today? What's going on with the Lumbees today? Well, even though they don't officially exist, the Lumbee Nation is the largest of the eastern bands. They have approximately 50,000 members of the Lumbee Nation. And you know what? They acquired their ancestral lands the white way. They bought it. The social center of the Lumbees is still in Robeson County today, and they've been there since when, like 1560, something like that? Or 1650, excuse me. It's their social center is still in Robeson County, North Carolina, and their political seat is in the town of Lumberton. They own and control their own businesses, schools, churches, and other public as well as private enterprises. They're governed by elected officials of their own nation. Now, yet they've got all this power. The Lumbee citizen can't secure a CDIB registration card because they are not a quote-unquote recognized tribe. Now, a CDIB registration card is like the official government card that says you are a Native American. So this makes the Lumbee just one more of the thousands of Native Americans who've never been acknowledged by the U.S. government and who therefore don't exist in the eyes of the laws which control this land. Now remember what I said a while ago. Who makes these laws? The white man. Now, I'm white, okay? But how can the white man make up a law for the Native Americans and say you have to meet this standard? You have to look Indian, you have to act Indian, you have to have your own language, you have to have your own name. You know, how can the white man who make this for the Native American people who were here millennia before we were, how do we figure out that we have the right to make up these standards? Well, regardless, we did, and the government says, hey, you Lumbee people, you don't meet these requirements because you don't look Indian enough, you don't act Indian enough, you don't have your own native language, and you don't have Indian names. So therefore, no matter what, you're not Indians. It's freaking unbelievable. It really, really kills me. But there's nothing I can do about it. Now, like I said, I never heard of the Lumbee Indians until 4 years ago. Never read anything about them in school. When I learned about the Lost Colony, there was no mention of the Hatteras tribe. There was no mention of Lumbee Indians. There was no mention that members of the Lost Colony might have survived. And here's some theories. There was nothing. There was the word Croatan, and there was Sir Walter Raleigh, and there was missing colonists. And that was pretty much what you learned, and that they weren't found. Now, I found out, like I said, about the Lumbee Indians about 4 years ago, give or take a few months. Never heard of them. Read a couple of books, looked up some information, and the whole thing just fascinated me. And I think that there's something to this. I think that the Lumbee Nation, their descendants, can be traced back to the Hatteras Indians and to the 117 colonists of Sir Walter Raleigh's Lost Colony. The circumstantial evidence is overwhelming. You combine that with just logic and man's will to survive, no matter what time he's in or where he's at, and you have an undeniable fact here. Now, as late as 1992, the Lumbees made yet another bid for tribal recognition that was rejected by the Congress of the United States. Their logic for rejecting this: the Lumbee do not have the required percentage of native blood necessary to be accepted. Now, you have to have, apparently, in order to be a recognized Indian, not only do you have to look Indian and act Indian, and you have to have your tribe that you belong to, your ancestors have to have some sort of native language apparently, but now you have to have a certain percentage to be officially listed as a Native American. So now there's just one more thing that they're saying, well, you don't have the necessary, you may be Indian, but you don't have the necessary percentage of Indian blood, so we're not going to give you tribal recognition. And now, the Lumbees are very prosperous people. I've already told you about them being self-governing. You know, they do not need the control of the government, the subsidies, the allotments, and the handouts that the government give to Native American Indians. Really, there is nothing the government can do for the Lumbee. So, is there really a reason to grant them this tribal standing? Congress says, no, not really. You're prosperous. You govern yourself. You know, you're a prosperous people. So we don't really need to help you out because you don't need our help. Well, guess what? Congress, you miss the point. Again, one more time. The Lumbee are seeking tribal recognition because of this. They were some of the first peoples of our land here in the United States of America. They're seeking tribal recognition because, guess what? They are real, and they do exist. And their heritage and their traditions are very much alive in their everyday life and in their hearts. They are Native Americans through and through. It doesn't matter if they're half Native and half white. Their traditions are a mixture of the two. It makes them probably, at least in the Sandman's opinion, the most unique Indian nation in the whole entire United States. They are the only nation that can lay claim to their ancestors being white and being Native American and joining up with each other and making this one unique and eclectic tribe. Now, during one of former President Clinton's town hall meetings, and I'm so glad I could say former because I really hate Clinton, that dick. During one of his former town hall meetings that he held during his first campaign for presidency, a young woman, don't know her name, but a young woman stood up and asked him what he planned to do about the quote-unquote situation with the Lumbee. Now, of course, Clinton had no idea what she referred to, but he said that he would investigate. Well, did he? No. He didn't. Of course not. Didn't really mean to do it. He forgot about it as soon as he said it, I bet. Well, will anything be done? Will the Lumbees ever get tribal recognition? Well, it's looking better and better for the Lumbee Nation because it's either sometime the end of this year or maybe in next year, they are going up once again before Congress for tribal recognition, and this time it looks like they're going to get it. Everything has been verbally, now I say verbally because we all know how the governments are, everything has been verbally okayed by the government and said that it looks like, this time they're going to get tribal recognition, but we don't know. They're still in limbo. They have no idea what in the hell is going to be going on. And as soon as I find out what's happening with them, I'll do another show, and I'll let you know. And I'll probably do another show about this between now and then anyway, because this could be a year or more before they find out what's going on. I mean, the Lumbee people are so, gosh, they have progressed so far from even other recognized tribes. I mean, there's people from the Cherokee Nation and the mighty Sioux Nation who have gone up to modern-day Robeson County in North Carolina and seen what the Lumbees have accomplished and are just absolutely, totally awestruck. I mean, the Lumbees, I know a lot of people don't even know the Lumbees exist, so of course you're not going to know this tidbit of information, but they opened the first school for Indians. During segregation in Robeson County, there was 3 of everything. There was like a water fountain for the whites, a water fountain for the blacks, and a water fountain for the Indians. And these Indians were the Lumbees. So they got together, formed their own group of educators, built a school. That school actually later became a college for Indians, and when everything was desegregated, they had to allow whites and blacks to come in their school, but it's now known as Pembroke University, and it's where, probably 99% of the Lumbees or better get their college education. It was opened by Lumbee Indians, ran by Lumbee Indians, and it's still, to this day, mostly governed by Lumbee Indians. So, they're a very prosperous nation, they're very prosperous people. I mean, it is totally just unbelievable at how prosperous these people are. So as soon as I find out some info on whether or not they get recognition, I'll do another show, and like I said, I'll probably do another show between now and then. So as I keep saying, turn on, tune in to find out, and we'll see what's going on with the Lumbee Indians. Man, the Sandman's throat is dry. Let me get something. Let me get a little something to wet my whistle here. I've been talking for over an hour. Seems like I've been talking a lot less than that. Man. Well, that was my whole speech, my whole spill on the Lumbee Indians. That's a subject that I'm very passionate about, in case you couldn't tell. And if you missed the first part of the show, tune in whenever the replay starting tomorrow, or actually starting later on this evening, as soon as I get it uploaded onto the server, and check out the first part of the show, because if you tuned in late, you missed some good information.
Struggling with weight loss? Prolon's 5-day fasting mimicking diet is a clinically developed nutrition program designed to promote fat loss while protecting lean body mass. Developed at USC's Longevity Institute, it assists the body in entering a fasting-like state that helps reset metabolism and target visceral fat. In just 5 days, Prolon offers a science-backed approach to weight loss without extreme restriction or guesswork. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/now.
All right. Let's wind down the show. Let's talk about some news of the strange. You notice I'm doing a little different format with my news of the strange. I've got some real news mixed in with the strange news, and also some paranormal news out there. Did a little poll on my on the forum, and most of my listeners liked the news of the strange idea, but they wanted to see a little bit different format. They wanted maybe some paranormal stuff mixed in with it, which, makes sense. So let's get on with news of the strange. My lead story tonight is going to be about the new planetoid that was discovered in our solar system. The NASA-funded researchers have discovered the most distant object orbiting the Earth's sun to date. The object is a mysterious planetoid, a planet-like body 3 times further from the Earth than Pluto is. From this distance, the sun appears so small that you could completely block it out with the head of a pin. The planetoid is called Sedna, named after the Inuit goddess of the ocean. Sounds like a drug, Are you having problems with your sleep at night? Try taking Sedna. It sounds just like a drug. Anyway, this planetoid is about 8 billion miles, which is 13 billion kilometers away, and it is in the furthest reaches of our solar system. It's likely the first detection of the long hypothesized Oort cloud. The Oort cloud is a faraway repository of small icy bodies that supplies the comets that streak by Earth. Other notable features of this planetoid Sedna include its size and its reddish hue. After Mars, it is the second reddest object in our solar system. Whoop-de-freaking-do. It's estimated that Sedna is approximately 3/4 the size of Pluto. It is likely the largest object found in our solar system since Pluto was discovered back in 1930. Remember, it's been out there for millennia, but it's a new planet because we didn't discover it until 1930. Sedna is extremely far from the sun in the coldest known region of our solar system. Out there, the temperatures never rise above minus 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, that's damn cold. The planetoid is usually even colder than that because it approaches the sun only very briefly because it has a 10,500-year solar orbit. At its most distant point, Sedna is 84 billion miles from the sun, which is 900 times Earth's solar distance. Sedna's size, it's about halfway between Pluto and Quaoar. Quaoar is a planetoid that was discovered by the same team that discovered Sedna. They discovered Quaoar in 2002, so Quaoar is pretty new too, isn't it? There is indirect evidence that Sedna may have a moon. The researchers hope to check out this possibility with NASA's Hubble Space Telescope while they've still got it, because if you've also been listening to the NASA news, the Hubble Telescope is apparently losing its funding. NASA's not going to be taking care of it anymore, and if NASA doesn't take care of it, it's going to do the old Skylab crash and burn, apparently. So they better use this damn thing while they got the freaking chance. They still don't understand what's on the surface of Sedna. It's nothing like what they would have predicted or what they could explain. Sedna will become closer and brighter over the next 72 years before it begins its 10,500-year trip to the far reaches of the solar system. The last time Sedna was this close to the sun, Earth was just coming out of the last ice age. The next time it comes back, the world might again be in a completely different state. So, we've got a new little planetoid out there, Sedna. Next thing you know, we'll be doing Sedna probes instead of probing Mars. Actually, I would like to probe Uranus next. That was a little joke for all you people out there listening. Thank you. I'll be here for the next few minutes. Remember to tip your waitresses. Okay, so I'm not funny. Okay, I tried. Okay. Getting on with the paranormal news. My paranormal news is strange creature forces Maru women indoors. Women in Maru, headquarters of Maru local government area of Zamfara, have been forced to remain indoors in the evenings for fear of a strange creature which chases them. The news agency of Nigeria, also known as NAN, learned that the mysterious creature, said to be half human, half horse, usually appears in the early hours of the morning and in the evenings. The appearance of the strange The appearance of this strange creature has crippled the socio-economic activities in the town, especially at night, because people are preferring to stay at home from 4 o'clock in the afternoon till the morning. The creature is believed to have surfaced in different locations of the town, and is causing much anxiety and fear among the residents, particularly the women. When contacted to comment on the issue, one of the sons of Emir of Maru, Alhaji Isa Maru, said the rumor was strong and, quote, "We are still trying to get to the root of it," unquote. Now, this has been going on for quite some time. I remember reading something about this thing several months ago. They still don't know what it is, apparently. A cross between a horse and a man. What would you call that? Let's see. A cross between a man and a bull is what, a minotaur? So you got a minihorse? Does that sound right? Would it be a minihorse? Is there a minihorse stalking the women of Maru? Is he hung like a horse? What's he trying to do? What's going on out there? A minihorse. I think I've just coined a new term, a minihorse. What do you think? Yes, no, maybe, in between? No one's trying to get in touch with me here tonight. That's bad news. I'm on the net meeting, 192.168.0.2, or Skywalker89@hotmail.com for you MSN people. Or if you happen to have Yahoo Chat, you can get in touch with me, GreyDragon98. That's GREY, Dragon98. Or you can drop me an email, PRRadio@50g.com. That's the number 50, the letter G.com. All right. Some dumb criminal activity going on. This is an example of a good cop gone bad. This comes from the Dallas Morning News. Actually, this happened in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. A small-town police officer is accused of paying a 10-year-old Little League pitcher $2 to hit an opposing batter with a fastball. Prosecutors aren't saying why Officer Sean Phillips would want the batter out of commission. Phillips is not related to anyone on either team, according to league managers. Still, they say Phillips was on duty. Now, this happened back in May of last year, May 21st, when he walked into East Penn Elementary School, took the pitcher outside, and asked him to, quote-unquote, accidentally hit the player. The officer allegedly gave the boy, get this, $2 behind the school bike racks. The kid pitcher for the service construction team did the job, nailing the opposing team's cleanup batter below the belt, dropping him to his knees, and leaving a giant welt on his skin. The player had to leave the game. Phillips was charged Wednesday with solicitation to commit simple assault, corruption of minors, and official oppression. He could face 6 months in jail if convicted. Now, you know I have a thing with people hurting kids. last show I did the little story about the guy who was doing the sleep hypnosis thing on his his 6-year-old stepson to strangle the 4-year-old stepson. I mean, this cop it falls into the same fucking category. This sick motherfucker wanted someone to get hurt. Why? What harm can a little kid possibly do to anybody? I mean, apparently if he didn't know him, what is he, just a sick little motherfucker? I mean, surely he's not a cop anymore. I mean, surely they took his badge away from him. This is a motherfucker. They should take the ball bat that the dude that got hit was using at that time. They should take the fucking ball bat, beat former Officer Phillips severely about the head, and then shove it up his ass as far as they can get it. That's what this motherfucker deserves. Now, rounding out news of the strange. I saved the best for last. This comes from the What Were They Thinking category. The headline is this: Chinese couple mistakes son for a 13... Let me back that up because I totally fucked that up. The headline is this: Chinese couple mistakes son for a girl for 13 years. A Chinese couple reportedly raised their only child for 13 years in the belief that the child was a girl, until a visit to a local hospital alerted them to the fact that he was really a boy. Chinese media reports say the unidentified couple from the central city of, please God forgive me for massacring this, the central city of Zhengzhou were fooled by their child's underdeveloped sexual organs. They dressed him in girls' clothes and taught him to go to female public toilets. They did not realize anything was wrong until they were baffled by, quote, a reaction in the lower half of his body, unquote, whenever he watched pretty women on TV. He popped a freaking Woody. The worried parents took their child to the hospital where a physical checkup corrected their mistake about the child's sex. Doctors concluded that he was suffering from a rare disease causing sexual organs to be somewhat hidden from view. The boy was subsequently treated in a 3-hour-long successful operation. Now, what kind of motherfucking moron do you have to be to not know the sex of your child for 13 fucking years? How can you not know that your son is a boy? I know that you gotta have a license to do everything. You gotta have a license to vote. You gotta have a license to drive a fucking car. You gotta have a license to get married. But you don't have to have a license to have a baby. You should. Because we've got morons like these fucking idiots here from China. Okay, so the kid had a rare disease that made his genitals somewhat obscured. Notice the key word in there is somewhat. His genitals were somewhat obscured. How can you be such a fucking moron that you don't know the sex of your own child? And you know what? Even the child's a moron. Don't you think that if you were trying to be raised as a girl and you were a little boy, don't you think at some point in time that you would raise your hand and go, excuse me, Mom and Dad, I have a dick. Hello, cock and balls here, twigging berries. Don't you think maybe you would say something to your parents? Like, hey, I had a wet dream last night and jizzed all over myself. I mean, something. Hello? Say something. Don't just go through life. I mean, talking about total confusion for the poor little bastard. Oh, my God. And think about the humiliation now that he's going to have to go through when he goes back to school. For 13 years, all his little fucking friends have been calling him some chick name. He's been dressing in freaking dresses and wearing his hair in a fucking ponytail and going to slumber parties, going to the women's bathroom, going to the little girls' room to take a piss. Now he's going to come back from like summer break. He's going to go back to school. Little Chin is now Chang, or, you know, I mean, can you imagine the hell this poor little fucker's going to have to go through? I mean, oh, man. They're going to have to move. They're going to have to move out of the fucking country. Oh, they have totally fucked this kid for the rest of his life, man. I really feel sorry for the kid. I mean, he's 13 years old. He was probably thinking he was a fucking, you know, lesbian, too, because he was popping woodies when he was seeing, you know, naked women on TV or whatever, you know. Oh, Jesus Christ almighty, this poor little bastard. I'm so sorry for this guy. I am so sorry for this little dude. Whew, man. I just can't believe that there are morons like that on the face of this planet. I really can't. Well, that winds up News of the Strange for this evening. I hope that you guys had much fun out of that as I did. I want to take the last few minutes that I got to mention the sponsor of ParaReality Radio one more time, Vlad's Vault. Vlad's Vault can be found on the web at www.vladsvault.com. Oh, God, that poor little bastard. Okay. Vlad's Vault can be found on the web at www.vladsvault.com. Vlad's Vault is a horror movie review site. You can read reviews of many different kinds of horror movies, from the modern-day classics to the old classics to everything in between, or you can post your own review as a guest reviewer, excuse me. You can also find, I'm sorry, I'm still cracking up over that story. You can also find links to other horror-related websites. You can also find some biographies and filmographies of some of your favorite horror actors, and they've also got a nice collection of horror-related wallpaper for you to download. Or if you want to just state what's on your mind, you can visit the forum section of Vlad's Vault. Just click on the link that says forum, and it'll take you to horroropinion.com. That's HORROPINION, horroropinion.com. Go over there and state your mind, join in on the conversation. You'll also find the ParaReality Radio thread there. You can click on that and let me know what's going on with you. Let me know what you think about tonight's show or any previous show, or start your own freaking thread about something. Be sure and sign the Vlad's Vault guest book and let them know what a great site they've got, and tell them that the Sandman sent you. And give a shout out to Vlad and Igor, the moderators and owners of Vlad'sVault.com, and shout out to all the regular guys over there who regularly review movies and who visit Horror Opinion. Olsen Gus, what's up, buddy? You're my pal. Snow Beast, keep up the good stuff with the comic book stuff, buddy. How y'all doing out there? And welcome to the new members, and Head Monster, glad to see you back. Anyway, that's enough of that crap. I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. The Lumbees are an interesting topic, and it's one that's very dear to my heart. And no, I am not a Lumbee. I am not Native American. I am a white boy through and through. But that's just a subject that's very dear to my heart. I hope to be doing some follow-up shows on this subject, and maybe, just maybe, have a guest or two on as well. Let me know what you think about tonight's show by sending me an email at prradio@50g.com. That's the number 50, the letter G, prradio@50g.com. Or leave me a message on my forum, www.horroropinion.com. About halfway down, click on the ParaReality Radio thread. Or you can just visit pararealityradio.tripod.com and click on the forum link there. Join me again in 2 weeks for the next live show. That date's going to be Friday, April 2nd, 2004 at 10 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. Whoa, that's the day after April Fool's Day. How about that? Well, don't worry, I'm not going to do any stupid April Fool's Day jokes or anything, so don't even think about it. My topic for that show that night is going to be the Jersey Devil. I've been waiting for a while to do a show on this topic, so be sure to tune in and find out on April 2nd. I certainly hope that this radio program opens up your mind and produces a change in the way that you think and the way that you view things. Remember, if you wish to change, you must lift the veil of ignorance that has been cast over your eyes. Only then will you see the true power of the universe. I love that quote. That is actually a quote. You guys, remember, if you got any different versions of Enter Sandman out there, send it to me and I'll play it as the opening theme song of my show. So, if you got something out there, send it to me and we'll see what's going to happen. Whoa. Man, you know what? I keep having all kind of freaking problems and everything. All right, there we go. All right. Well, you guys have a wonderful evening, and I will see you again in 2 weeks.
If you wish to change, you must first lift the veil of ignorance that has been cast over your eyes. Only then will you see the true power of the universe.